A few seconds left. It's 9 o'clock. I'll call this meeting to order. I'll ask Casey Griffin, our roll, to call the roll, please.
Mr. Cobbins. Ms. Cox.
Here.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Here.
Mr. Holt. Mr. Gentile.
Here.
Mr. Jensen. Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Ms. McInturf.
Here.
Mr. Mullenhour.
Here.
Mr. Wells. Here. Mr. Chairman.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 voting members present.
I declare a quorum is present and we're duly convened. This time again, I'd like to welcome Ms. Marsha Johnson here as representing our newest member, representing the 7th Congressional District. She was here yesterday for our workshop and eagerly participated, and we look forward to that continued participation. Welcome. I want to remind all presenters when you come to please state your name and your position before addressing the board. I ask Dr. Morrison if she's got any comments.
I can give a quick recap of yesterday's workshop if that would be helpful.
That'd be good.
I know many of you joined us just for our Friday meeting, which we greatly appreciate, but those of you that were not with us yesterday might want to know just a little bit about the conversation that we had as a board and with staff at the State Board and the Department of Education. We went into some very interesting topics in detail, and it's worth going back if they are topics of interest to you to watch the videos. We heard from Brooke Amos and Taylor Reed at the Department of Education about additional endorsement pathways. This is particularly important when we think about special education, ESL, and computer science. And we talked particularly about sort of where the department is seeing success with partnerships through EPPs across the state, offering those additional endorsements and trying to ensure that we've got staffed educators with the training in those areas across the state. We heard from the superintendent and staff in Colliersville, and particularly about their ESL supports and how they're working to support a very rapidly growing population of ESL students, and what they're doing around curriculum, what challenges they're running into, how they're approaching that in a really proactive way. And again, very instructive for our board and something we really appreciated having yesterday in terms of that district and educator input on an important area of work. We heard from Matthew Spinella and Liza Ambrose at the Department of Education about work-based learning pathways and dual enrollment. Again, another area that we're seeing a lot of growth and where Tennessee is certainly seen as a leader. Talked a lot about how that work-based learning and dual enrollment numbers are ticking up and what populations of students are participating and how we can continue to widen the pool of students who are eligible for those programs. We heard from Nathan James at the State Board around legislative updates and recap from the 2024 session. There were hundreds of education-related bills, and he was kind to limit it to the ones that were most salient for the State Board, but spent some time really digging into some of the important legislation that passed this session. And then finally, we heard from Jennifer Jordan and her team at the Department of Education about really important subject, timely, the WIDA to ELPA 21 transition, which we'll be voting on today in its first iteration and represents a big change, an exciting change for our state, but also really understanding, the impetus for that change, how the State Department is working to support districts in this rollout, what that'll look like over time as they bring stakeholders together to continue to think about the needs and the challenges associated with that important transition. So it was a full day. If those are any topics of interest, I would encourage you to go back and watch some of the video from yesterday. But with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. It was a full day, but very interesting day, and I want to thank everyone who presented. It was very helpful to us. With that, we'll move on to our agenda items. First is our consent items, adoption of an agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move to approve.
I have a motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion opposed? Motion's carried. First item on our list is then the remainder of the consent items. Is there a motion to approve all the remainder of the consent items?
I so move.
Ms. Johnson moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. McInturf seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor of adopting all the consent items signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next are our report items, and I think two of the things that we do on the board that we like the most are to recognize our students and recognize the good schools that educate those students. And one of the exciting things we get to do every year is to recognize the Blue Ribbon schools and the distinguished schools. And so first we'll bring up the Blue Ribbon schools. I think Christy Brown.
Good morning. I'm here on behalf of Deborah Thompson to present the recognition for the National Blue Ribbon Schools this morning. So happy that everyone is here and honored to be able to do this. I'm going to be joined by Mary Ann Dursky, Chief Financial Officer at the department, and the commissioners when we present the awards in just a moment. The National Blue Ribbon Schools program recognizes public and private elementary, middle, and high schools based on their overall academic excellence and their progress in closing achievement gaps among student subgroups. Every year, the U.S. Department of Education seeks out and celebrates great American schools, demonstrating that all students could achieve at high levels. The National Blue Ribbon School Award affirms the hard work of all the students, the educators, the families, and the communities in creating safe and welcoming schools where students master challenging content. This year, 6 public schools in Tennessee have been recognized as National Blue Ribbon Schools in 2023 and are among the state's highest performing schools in achievement measured by the TCAP. We are pleased to be joined by those schools today. The first school, and I can have the representatives from the schools come up so I call out the name of the school, and sure. We'll present the plaques to the schools being recognized and joined by the commissioner. The first school is Middle College at Austin Peay State University. The school is led by directors of schools, Dr. Jean Luna Vetter, and the school principal is here. There you go.
Okay, we're getting our.
There we go. This school is led by Principal Phyllis Casebolt. Middle College is a unique collaborative program between the Clarksville-Montgomery County School System and Austin Peay State University that enables junior and senior high school students to obtain a high school education while concurrently receiving direct and invaluable access to free college courses. The school was created to engage students who find it difficult to connect or become engaged in traditional high school programs. And the vision of the school is for all students to graduate with an attainable, well-structured plan for their post-secondary goals. Congratulations to Middle College at Austin Peay State University. Our next school to be recognized is Nolan Elementary. This is in Hamilton County School District, led by Director of Schools Justin Robertson and the school principal Ashley Aldrich Wilson. Nolan Elementary serves as a small mountain community just outside of Chattanooga with committed community support, strong parental involvement, and a dedicated staff. Nolan stands out as a wonderful place to learn and grow. A key in their academic plan is that staff collectively identify and are committed to using highly effective research-based instructional practices, providing consistent high-quality instruction every single classroom. Congratulations to Nolan Elementary. Our next school is Brentwood Middle School in Williamson County, led by Director of Schools Jason Golden and school principal Dr. Bill Harlan. Brentwood Middle School has been serving students and families in the Nashville suburb of Brentwood since 1972. Their community of students, parents, teachers, and local government leaders strongly believe that education at BMS should be of high quality and educators should have high expectations for all students. As a proud 3-time National Blue Ribbon recipient, Brentwood Middle School has shown itself to be an advocate for a rigorous academic education. Congratulations to Brentwood Middle School. Our next school is Crosswind Elementary. In Collierville, led by directors of schools. That's not right. You have new directors of schools. Russell Dyer, the school principal, led by new director of schools, Russell Dyer, and school principal Christy Merlin. Crosswind Elementary is one of 6 elementary schools in Collierville, a suburban school district just outside of Memphis, and they believe that educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. Crosswind, when students come to school ready to learn and be successful because they have positive learning experiences. Not only do teachers care about meeting the Tennessee standards, but they also know each student's story and have built relationships with each child. Congratulations, Crosswind Elementary. Our next school is Fairmont Elementary School in Johnson City Schools, led by Director of Schools Steve Barnett with School Principal Carol McGill. Fairmont is one of 8 schools comprising the elementary grade band of Johnson City Schools. Student success at Fairmont is a result of an intentional and unified approach to ensure high expectations are in place and communicated to every student. As a proud 2-time National Blue Ribbon recipient, Fairmont ensures achievement goals are met through planned, time-on-task instruction, as well as accountability measures central to identifying and supporting individual student needs. Congratulations, Fairmont Elementary. Our next school we'll recognize is Linden Elementary. It's a school in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. A director of schools is Bruce Botchers, and school principal is Heather Jenkins. I'm not sure they're here today, but we're going to recognize them all the same. Linden Elementary is honored to teach approximately 550 kindergarten through 4th grade students as part of Oak Ridge Schools. The long tradition of their caring, compassionate staff and overwhelming parent and community involvement continues to contribute to the school's overall academic success. Their continued focus on the whole child ensures that every student is prepared for college, career, and life success. Let's congratulate Linden Elementary.
I'm worried about Linden Elementary since they're not here. It's the school that my wife retired at after 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And both my kids attended, so I will accept that. Now we're going to do
Second item. Okay, our second item, Christy Brown, Chief Academic Officer of the Department of Education. I think this is the second item. The National Association of ESEA State Program Administrators has been selecting examples of superior Title I schools from all states for national recognition since 1996. Each year, Tennessee selects 2 schools for recognition, one for excellence in serving special populations of students and one for exceptional student performance. The schools recognized demonstrate a wide array of strengths, including team approaches to teaching and learning, focused and professional development opportunities for their staff, and individualized programs for student success, and strong partnerships between the school, the parents, and their communities. 2 public schools in Tennessee have been recognized as National ESEA Distinguished Schools in 2023 and are among the state's highest performing Title I schools in achievement as measured on Tennessee Ready Assessment. First school we have is Dresden Elementary. Weakley County Schools, led by Director of Schools Larry Lusk and the school principal Rena McKnight. Dresden Elementary is a proud member of Weakley County Schools. The school follows a model of rigorous, continuous improvement with a goal to improve and get better with each day of instruction. Dresden staff tracks and actively uses data to drive decision-making and instructional practices. Teachers also have a culture of transparency and trust to openly problem solve and discuss ways to help students achieve full potential. Congratulations, Dresden Elementary. Our next school to be recognized is East Chester Elementary School, who will also go ahead and recognize, and Chester County Schools. Director of Schools is Troy Kilsner, led by school principal Peyton Buckley. East Chester Elementary School is nestled in the heart of Henderson, Tennessee. It's an integral part of the Chester County school system. In each classroom, students are encouraged to take ownership of their own learning. Through this leadership, East Chester students are fully invested in the learning process. And over the years, the school has focused on pushing love for reading so students are able to build stamina, and develop extensive background knowledge that helps them succeed in all content areas. Let's congratulate East Chester Elementary. I think we do have like the boxes for the plaques in there in the back if you all want to get those too, the things that they come in. I want to congratulate all of you. Thank you all for being here today and those who also came to support.
Yes, congratulations. That's a very special honor, and thank you for everything that you do for our students. Next item under report items is communications, and this is where opportunity where our board members can talk about the engagement that they've been involved in. Kudos to Allie Reed. She does an excellent job on our staff, assuring that our board members are engaged with various districts throughout the year. So Allie, thank you. So any board members like to provide any reports on anything they've done during this last quarter?
Mr. Chairman, can you
Yes,
hear me?
yes, Chair Metters.
The only thing that I will say is that since the last meeting, of course, my typical is visiting with the districts, or actually attending their study council meetings. So I certainly have continued to do that. And I know that board members will do that whenever they can. And I know sometimes it's challenging to meet those schedules. So that's predominantly what I did between then, when we met, and now. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll mention a few things. Michael Dearline and I, once again, participated with the Bradley County Fellowship Leadership teachers when they come to Nashville for the day, and talk to them about the state board and what our responsibilities are and what we do. And that's always a highlight of the year, and we appreciated doing that again this year. I also attended SCORE, the School Collaborative on Reforming Education, did a seminar on mental health here in Nashville at Belmont University. And that was really interesting and, gave me a whole new perspective about the importance of mental health. One comment that was made was, when we hurt our ankle or something, we go to a doctor, but sometimes when we have mental health, we don't always go to a doctor. And I think that's something that we need to continue to look at and understand better, so as we educate our students to be able to recognize when mental health issues are there. So I would highlight this as something that the board continue to look at throughout the year. And then last, on May the 20th, I spent the day down at Hamilton County Schools with Allie Reed. We visited two schools, Harrison Elementary School and the STEM School, Chattanooga. It was a very interesting day. Harrison Elementary School is an F-rated school, and STEM School Chattanooga is an A-rated school. And if I walked into those two schools and didn't know what their ratings were, I would say they were both A-rated schools. It was outstanding what we saw was going on at Harrison Elementary School. The new principal's been there for a year. She had to hire 70% of her staff when she started. Those kids are motivated. They're working hard, and I'll be anxious to see how they turn out this next year as grades come out in the future. And then the STEM School Chattanooga, an outstanding program. Yesterday we talked about dual enrollment. 100% of their students are in dual enrollment. Not that many of them end up with an associate's degree, but they all take dual enrollment classes, and it's preparing them for the future when they get out. So some great things being done in our districts. I encourage all of our board members to participate as they can and visit the schools. Anyone else have anything else they want to talk about?
I also attended the First Corps Superintendent Study Council back in May, and Allie and Nathan, they were both able to join me, and Nathan did a great job updating for all the lawmaking updates, and Dr. Corwin from the State Department did a great job updating about all the changes that are happening this summer. So.
Great. Those superintendent state council meetings are an excellent opportunity to learn, again, what's going on across the state and to hear from the superintendents the issues that they have. So just encourage each board member to participate as they can. I know we're all busy, but it's very helpful. Next, we'll go into item 3, automatic teacher licensure items. I think Mr. Todd Madison, Alex Anderson, and Ryan Shanahan. And yesterday, we did note our new legal intern here. Lily Schufo is here and spending the summer with us, and we welcome her again, too.
Good morning, members. Todd Madison. I'm the Senior Associate Counsel for the board. I'm joined by Associate Counsels Ryan Shanahan and Alex Anderson. And as Mr. Chair mentioned, our law intern, Ms. Liliana Schufo. First item we have for y'all for your consideration today is the automatic teacher license actions. State law and board rule require that the board automatically revoke or automatically permanently revoke an individual's educator license for certain conduct outlined in law and board rule. Each one of these individuals has either committed one of the specified criminal offenses or meets the classification as outlined by DCS. As such, we recommend the approval of these actions.
We have a recommendation from our staff. Is there a motion to accept that recommendation? Mr. Wells moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mullenhour seconds. Are any questions or discussion? No questions or discussions. This does require a roll call vote. Mr. Griffin, please call the roll.
Mr. Cobbins. Ms. Cox.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Mr. Holt. Mr. Jensen. Mr. Johnson. Ms. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. McInturf.
Aye.
Mr. Mullenhour.
Aye.
Mr. Wells.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes.
The motion passes. Next is item 4, teacher licensure discipline action. Mr. Todd Madison and team.
Yes, sir. These are the recommendations for license action by way of consent order. Each of these individuals has agreed to the proposed action against their license for alleged misconduct as outlined in board rule. The legal staff recommends the approval of these actions, and we're happy to take any questions that you may have.
We have a recommendation. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation?
So moved.
Chair Matters Hartgrove so moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mullenhour seconds. Are there any discussions or questions for Mr. Madison and his team? We have a motion and a second. No discussion. Mr. Griffin, please call the roll.
Mr. Cobbins. Ms. Cox.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Mr. Holt. Mr. Jensen. Ms. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. McInturf.
Aye.
Mr. Mullenhour.
Aye.
Mr. Wells.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes.
That motion passes. We'll move on to our action items on first reading. First item, educator licensure, Ms. Taylor Reed.
Good morning, Taylor Reed, Senior Director of Licensure for the department. To align with recently passed legislation from the 2024 legislative session, this item proposes key revisions to Tennessee State Board of Education Educator Licensure Rule 0520/-02-03. In accordance with House Bill 390/SB 191, extending the validity period for professional level licenses to 10 years. In accordance with Public Chapter 843, revises the permits rule -.12 to allow the commissioner to issue temporary teaching permits for elementary physical education, PE courses. Revisions also allow an individual on a limited license to teach elementary PE. In accordance with Public Chapter 876, allowing the commissioner to issue temporary teaching permits for courses with an end of course or EOC examination, provided that the individual is assigned a mentor teacher by the director of schools or director of the public charter school. Lastly, this rule revises section -.11 to remove the reference to Public Chapter 932 of the 2022 legislative session that allowed endorsement exemptions for courses with an end-of-course examination, as this flexibility has now expired. State Board staff will hold a rulemaking hearing between first and final reading to collect public feedback. The Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first reading. The SBE staff concurs with this recommendation.
We have a recommendation for a motion. Is there a motion so that we can have discussion? Mr. Wells moves. Is there a second? Ms.
Second.
McInturf seconds. Discussion. Questions for Ms. Reed? I have a question or comment first. Be interesting to see, to track how these permits are and how effective the permits are for the teachers that are on permit. Do you intend to do that, or is there a way to do that, or?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. That is currently, some of that is in process, and we have been gathering that data and turning it over to an external organization to run some analysis on it. But that is data that we are collecting and we know will be in the future. And we are currently compiling the current emergency credential data for this most previous school year as well.
I understand the need for permits. Obviously, we've got to provide the teachers, but we want to be sure that, you know, our students are getting the education that they need. And thank you.
Absolutely.
Other questions or comments? No questions or comments. We have a recommendation for approval, educator licensure rules on first reading. Is all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, employment standards rule.
Hello again, Taylor Reed, Senior Director of Licensure for the department. This item revises section -.01 and section -.02 of Tennessee State Board of Education Employment Standards Rule 0520-02-06 to clarify the purpose of the rule and to add 2 new employment standards for teachers. This item proposes revisions to section -.01 to clarify that employment standards outline the requirements for certain school and district level positions that educators may hold without holding a specific endorsement. This item also amends section -.02 to extend flexibility for individuals to teach Year 1 CTE courses. This amendment would expand flexibility for individuals to teach courses offered to students in 6th through 9th grades by allowing teachers holding a valid Tennessee teacher license to teach Year 1 CTE courses after successful completion of a department-approved CTE training. Lastly, this item also creates an employment standard to align with Tennessee Code annotated Chapter 49-6-6006, which allows an educator holding an active teacher license to teach a course with an end-of-course examination if the educator demonstrates sufficient content knowledge in the course material by taking and passing, at their educator's own expense, a standardized or criterion referenced test for the content area. This employment standard would allow any educator holding an active educator license to teach a course with an end-of-course exam if the educator obtains a qualifying score on the applicable assessment as found in the Professional Assessments for Tennessee Educators Policy 5.105, aligned to the active endorsement for that course as found in the department's Course Code Management System, CCMS. The creation of an employment standard provides an avenue to a digital credential for the educator that will assist in annual monitoring and compliance. State Board staff will hold a rulemaking hearing between first and final reading to gather public feedback. The Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first reading. The SBE staff concurs with this recommendation.
We have a recommendation to approve on first reading employment standards rule 0520, 02, 06, 01, 05. Is there a motion?
So moved. And I have a
Mr.
question.
Mullenhour moves. Is there a second? Yes. Ms. Johnson seconds. Yeah. Go ahead.
I just have a question. I think perhaps my last question for Angie. So we talked about this a little bit in preparation for the meeting, but I just want to try to bring clarity. In the new language that talks about demonstrating sufficient knowledge, there's a reference to the phrase "at the teacher's own expense." So when I read this, what I'm reading is that the teacher themselves would have to actually pay for the continuing education in order to qualify under this particular section. That may or may not have been the intent of the legislator or the legislature. My concern is simply if we have a situation where an administrator sees fit to want to sponsor that teacher or incentivize that teacher to get that endorsement, I think we would want to give that freedom to them to make that decision. Are we required as a board to include the at the teacher's own expense language in this particular rule?
Sure, Angie Sanders, General Counsel. That language is from the law itself. So we wouldn't have the ability to take that out necessarily, but certainly I think we could continue to have conversations with our partners in the General Assembly about giving some flexibility to districts that might want to do just what you're talking about.
Okay. Could we just flag that for our team to follow up on? I just want to make sure that to the extent that we can, we're giving as much discretion, leaving as much discretion as possible to the people who are on the front lines and who may in fact see fit to pay for or incentivize these endorsements and not require that the teachers pay for it out of their own pocket. Thank you.
I just want to make a comment regarding Robert's Rules of Order. We have to have a motion on the floor and seconded before we can have a discussion according to Robert's Rules. That's the reason I didn't acknowledge you until after we had a motion and a second. So I didn't want you to think I was ignoring you.
I thought it might have been old age, but that's okay. Thank you.
I do have a question, or just a comment. It's not a question. When I read through this, I was reading that people take a CTE, shall just hold a valid teacher's license to teach CTE, and, I'm thinking career technical education, somebody's going to teach, welding or something with just a teacher license, but that's not the case. The CTE course, first course, is just an introductory course and doesn't require content knowledge. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman, thank you for that. That is correct. These are introductory courses that would be taught, again, in 6th through 9th grades, mostly in the middle school setting. So it would be what is welding, but not necessarily actually welding, and I will not speak to what actually welding is. That would be great.
I just wanted to get that on the record because when I read it, I was confused by it, but wanted the clarification, so thank you.
Absolutely.
So, other questions or comments? If no further questions or comments, we do have a recommendation and a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye to the Employment Standards Rule 0520, 02, 06, 01, and 02. Signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Ms. Taylor Reed again, Educator Licensure Policy.
Hello again, Taylor Reed, Senior Director of Licensure for the department. Tennessee State Board of Education Educator Licensure Policy 5.205 further defines Educator Licensure Rule 0520-0203 and outlines general licensure requirements, including application and duration of licenses, professional development points, and endorsements. This item revises the endorsement section by outlining the requirements for educators to add the dance endorsement. The dance endorsement does not have an assessment, but does require an educator to hold a valid Tennessee educator license and have at least one course at the post-secondary level in dance or be recommended by a state board-approved EPP in dance. Currently, there is only one state board-approved EPP that can recommend a candidate for the dance endorsement. This item also revises the endorsement section by assigning endorsement codes for recently adopted English as a second language, health and wellness, and physical education endorsements in both the K-8 and 6-12 grade band splits. Assigning endorsement codes allows the department to process transactions for educators applying for Tennessee licensure through out-of-state reciprocity and adding endorsements by assessment only where applicable. The Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first reading. The SBE staff concurs with this recommendation.
We have a recommendation to approve Educator Licensure Policy 5.502. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove moves. Is there a second? Mr. Wells seconds. Are there questions or comments? Just a general question. As we go through these educator licensure policies, do we provide opportunity for districts to provide input as we change these policies?
Yes, thank you for that, Chairman. Absolutely. My team host a variety of input sessions monthly. We also attend and accept any opportunity where we are able to visit. So recently, my regional licensure consultant team and I attended the TASPA Spring Gathering, which is the Tennessee Association for School Professionals. So a lot of your HR individuals and those serving in those roles. And it was a very successful gathering. We think ahead for the upcoming season, and so we've really tried to develop a great fine line of giving them the information, but not so ingrained that the wrong information is there. So for example, we wouldn't give them a new test code that's coming up until it's there, but we do allow them and provide that information to give them opportunity for feedback. We also hold monthly office hours that are targeted for those individuals serving in licensure roles or who may be assisting. They've been very successful, and we hold grand regional breakouts. And then my team also has an assigned stakeholder list where every stakeholder knows exactly who they can go to and they have access to them at all times. And so we have a lot of opportunities for our districts, and we're always looking to expand those opportunities as well.
Thank you. Any further questions for Ms. Reed? No questions. We have a recommendation and a motion and a second on Educator Licensure Policy 5.502. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Reed. Next item is Occupational Educator Scholarship Program Rule. Dr. Jennifer Nelson.
Good morning. Hello, I'm Jennifer Nelson. I'm the Senior Director of Educator Preparation at the department. Tennessee State Board of Education Occupational Educator Scholarship Program Rule outlines the eligibility requirements, selection criteria, and terms for the Occupational Educator Scholarship Program. This item clarifies that the written agreement is with the state of Tennessee and changes the 4-year requirement to a 3-year requirement to teach and maintain an active and valid occupational teacher license. This revision coincides with the EPP's accreditation requirement of tracking candidates for 3 years. This item also defines timelines signifying repayment and account default and associated consequences. The Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first reading, and the SBE staff concurs with this recommendation.
Thank you. We have a recommendation for Occupational Educator Scholarship Roll 05200205-03 through 05. Is there a motion to accept this recommendation?
So moved.
Ms. Hartgrove so moves. A second. Ms. McInturf seconds. Are there any questions or comments? No questions or comments, then we have a motion and a second on first reading, Occupational Educational Scholarship Program Rule. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Next is Career and Technical Education Coordination and Supervision of Student Work-Based Learning Experience Rule 0520010704. Ms. Deborah Knoll.
Good morning. I'm Deborah Knoll, Assistant Commissioner of College, Career, and Technical Education for the Tennessee Department of Education. Happy to be here today to present on the Coordination and Supervision of Student Work-Based Learning Experience Rule. Chapter 543 of the Public Acts of 2024 increased the maximum number of work-based learning credits a student may earn in each school year. Previously, TCA 49-11-909 stated that students may earn a maximum of 3 work-based learning credits per school year, and at least 1 credit may be earned through related classroom experience, which must include a minimum of 2 periods per week of classroom instruction. The law also previously specified that the minimum of 10 hours per week of supervised work experience is required for the 1 additional credit, and a maximum of 20 hours per week would be required for the 2 additional credits. PC 543 amends the law to allow a student to earn up to 6 work-based learning credits each school year and states that a minimum of 5 hours per week of supervised work experience is now required for each additional credit. This item presents revisions to the rule to align with PC 543. State Board staff will hold a rulemaking hearing between first and final reading for public feedback. The Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first reading, and the State Board of Education staff concurs with this recommendation.
Thank you. We have a recommendation for career and technical education coordination supervision of student work-based learning experience rule on first reading. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Mr. Mullenhour moves. Ms. McInturf seconds. Are there comments or questions? I would just say this, we had an outstanding presentation yesterday on work-based learning and what's going on in Tennessee, and that's excellent. Well done. Any further comments or questions? All in favor then for accepting the Career and Technical Education Coordination of Supervision of Student Work-Based Learning Experience Rule 0520, 01, 07, 04, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, Educator Evaluation Policy, Ms. Brooke Amos.
Good morning, Brooke Amos, Assistant Commissioner of Human Capital. Pursuant to TCA 49-1-302 and Educator Evaluation Rule 0520-02-01, educators and evaluators are responsible for selecting a closely aligned achievement measure. The department monitors implementation and provides feedback to districts to ensure all measure selections comply with statute and policy. For an assessment to be recommended to the board, approval as an achievement measure, the department reviews the measure to ensure it meets key criteria. The department reviews the options on the achievement measure worksheet for use and applicability. Each approved achievement measure is reviewed for frequency of use. Additionally, all off-the-shelf measures have been reviewed by content experts to ensure alignment for current standards, rigor, and the ability to measure the impact of teaching practice. All measures recommended for inclusion and removal are listed on the cover sheet related to this item. Name changes are also highlighted. Based on expert review, 2 measures are recommended for inclusion on the achievement measure list. Based on lack of use by educators over the last 3 years, 7 measures are recommended for removal. Based on content expert review, 6 measures are recommended for removal based on lack of content standards, rigor, and the ability to measure the impact on teaching practice. The Department of Education recommends the acceptance of this item on first reading. The State Board staff concurs with this recommendation. Thank you.
We have a recommendation for Educator Evaluation Policy 5201. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Wells moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove seconds. Is there questions or comments? This is another one that I think is very important to get feedback from the districts on, and I know y'all are working on that.
Yes, sir. There are a few mechanisms for which that happens. One is that we do look at use, and so districts are in some ways voting with their use or lack thereof of the measures. We also have the ability for districts to recommend measures for consideration. That hasn't happened in recent cycles. And then we also are in very close contact with our core team, which is out in the field, speaking with districts and also have office hours.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? No questions. All in favor for accepting Educator Evaluation Policy 5201 on first reading, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Next item, Educator Preparation Policy. Dr. Nelson again.
Good morning again. Jennifer Nelson, Senior Director of Educator Preparation at the Tennessee Department of Education. This item presents the following revisions to the Educator Preparation Policy 5.504. This item adds charter management organizations to align with the revisions to the Educator Preparation Rule. It adds the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation, or what we call AQEP, to the provider and program reviews. It adds the department's review of EPP implementation to the foundational literacy skill standards to the annual report. Requires candidates for admission to an instructional leader preparation program to have successfully completed an educator preparation program and hold a valid educator license rather than a valid teaching license. Revises requirements for admission to instructional leadership preparation programs. It also revises requirements for clinical practice sites to include Category 1, 2, and 3 non-public schools to align with the Educator Preparation Rule. And last, it deletes the COVID-9 flexibility. The Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first reading. The State Board staff concurs with this recommendation.
Thank you. We have a recommendation for educator preparation policy 5.504. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove moves. Is there a second? Mr. Wells seconds. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Ms. Nielsen? No questions or comments. Then all in favor for accepting educator preparation policy 5504 on first reading signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Next item, repeal mental health standards and guidelines policy 4209. Ms. Lori Paisley.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Lori Paisley, Assistant Commissioner of the Coordinated School Health Division at the department. The Mental Health Standards and Guidelines Policy 4.209 provides guidelines on improving student achievement by reducing fragmentation of services and aligning and integrating mental health services to children. This policy has not been updated since 2009. Since then, with the support of the General Assembly and Governor Lee, the state has made unprecedented investments in student mental health and well-being. As part of those efforts, new and revised policies and programs have superseded the recommendations listed in this policy. Therefore, this item repeals the policy. The guidelines and recommendations contained in this policy are now included in and fully addressed by other policies and department programs, most significantly the Coordinated School Health Program Policy 4.204, School Counseling Model and Standards Policy 5.103, and Project Aware. The Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first reading, and the State Board staff concurs with this recommendation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Paisley. We have a recommendation to repeal mental health standards and guidelines policy 4.209. Is there a motion to accept? Ms. Johnson moves. Is there a second? Ms. McInturf seconds. Any questions? All in favor then for repealing mental health standards and guidelines policies 4.209 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, parent, family involvement, and engagement policy. Ms. Paisley.
Thank you. Again, I'm Lori Paisley, Assistant Commissioner of the Coordinated School Health Division at the department. The Parent, Family Involvement, and Engagement Policy 4.207 provides minimum standards for the development of parent-family involvement and engagement practices. This policy was last revised in 2015, and since then, the Department of Education has strengthened the support of high-quality parent-family involvement and engagement through the development of a state framework, professional development, communication, and program evaluation. The guidelines and recommendations in this policy are supported by the Coordinated School Health Program Policy 4.204. Previously, this policy also included content on community schools. However, this first reading item proposes to remove that information because community schools are primarily partnerships between an LEA and community partners. The community partners can provide a range of services to students, families, and residents. The department and state board support and encourage LEAs to form such partnerships through the work of Coordinated School Health and the specific Coordinated School Health component of student, family, and community involvement. Because the community schools partnerships are ultimately between the LEA and the community partner, and because there is not currently state grant funding available, there's not a need for state board policy on this issue, though the department will continue to support implementation. The Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first reading, and the state board concurs with this recommendation.
We have a recommendation for parent, family involvement, and engagement policy 4.207. Is there a motion to accept that recommendation?
So moved.
Mr. Mullenhour moves. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Wells seconds. Is there discussion or questions? Mr.
Yes, sir.
Mullenhour.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight for a second, there's a lot of things that we as a state can disagree on, and there's a lot of debate around the fringes. I just wanted to really underscore the fact that the legislature, the governor's office, the department, this board, educators all across the state have at least rallied to the point of being able to state the following. And I'm just going to read the purpose of this particular item. Parents and families are children's first and foremost. Parents and families are children's first and most important teachers. That's how this begins. And there's a lot of states and communities that wouldn't agree on that statement. And I think it's important to recognize that we do, and we can kind of call that as a kind of a rallying cry. It goes on to say this policy further defines statutory responsibilities of the Department of Education and LEAs, et cetera, and then it closes in Section 3B. Says the department shall support and encourage high-quality parent-family involvement and engagement through the development of a state parent-family involvement framework, professional development, communications, and program evaluation, which you explained a moment ago. In other words, we're not just saying, hey, parents and families are the most important teachers. We're backing that up, and we're backing that up with obligations, with commitments, and I just think that it's easy for an item like this to kind of come and go, and we all kind of sit back to work and not even realize just how important it is to reflect on that first statement. And I'm going to read it one more time, and then I'll stop. Parents and families are children's first and most important teachers. That is a very, very momentous point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullenhour. Other comments or questions? I have one. I totally agree with what Mr. Mullenhour said, and I think that student success, primary reason is for parental involvement. So what are we doing to ensure that the districts are taking care of their responsibilities associated with this policy and that the parents are engaged? What will the department be doing?
Excuse me. We have always supported that through the student, family, and community involvement component of coordinated school help. So we are continuing to do that, but we have strengthened the capacity of our division and our teams to do that. One of the things that I wanted to share in response to both of your comments is I have tasked my leadership team to strengthen and expand parent and family resources for all 8 components of coordinated school help. So one example that I'll share, you particularly have always been so supportive of not only physical education, but physical activity. And we have Heather Pierges, our PEPA specialist on our team. I have charged her with coming up with resources to help parents understand what a quality physical education program is. We don't just need them to know that their child takes PE in class, but what is a quality physical education program? But also, you all are very supportive of the physical activity law. We want our students to be physically active during the school day, but I want Heather and our team to help parents to understand why it's important to keep their children physically active after school, on the weekends, right now in the summer. But that's just one example of one of the components. I'm very pro-parent. I am a parent, although my children are grown, but I always speak up for them, and in our work in coordinated school health, we are going to help them to continue to be the best teachers for their kids, but also to be involved in their child's school and community.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? We have a recommendation then for acceptance of parent-family involvement and engagement policy 4.207. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes on first reading. Thank you, Ms. Paisley.
Thank you.
Next item, English Language Development Standards, Dr. Jennifer Jordan.
Good morning, Board. I'm presenting the English Language Development Standards, or ELDS, as we talked about yesterday. TCA 491308A8 authorizes the State Board of Education to set policies governing all academic standards and courses of study in the public schools. Additionally, State Board Rule 0520010301 calls for the State Board to adopt standards for each subject area grades K-12. The approved standards are to be the basis for planning instructional programs in each local school system. The English Language Development Standards were last adopted in 2013, when the state adopted WIDA's Standard Screener and Assessment. Starting in July 2024, the state will move to ELPA 21 for both its English as a second language programming standards and assessment. Therefore, this first reading item proposes to adopt the English Language Proficiency Assessment for the 21st century, ELPA 21 standards as Tennessee's English Language Development Standards. The English Language Development Standards are used to help English learners access content in their core classes. They are designed to complement instruction in the Tennessee Academic Standards for the other subjects, while also building students' development in the English language. The department has provided training opportunities for ESL teachers and district staff related to the ELPA 21 standards and assessment transition, and will continue to support its support plan through summer 2024. The Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first reading. The SBE staff concurs with this recommendation. And I think I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Jordan, Assistant Commissioner of Special Education and Student Supports at the department.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. We have a recommendation for English Language Development Standards. Is there a motion to accept that recommendation?
So moved.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove moves. Is there a second? Ms. McInturf seconds. Are there questions or discussions? I will say this, as yesterday we had an outstanding presentation by you and your team that answered all the questions I had with regard to it. And,
That was my goal.
Mr. Chairman?
yes,
I
Ms.
was
Hartgrove.
I was going to say the same thing, because you all did an excellent job, and it was evident that you all did everything that you needed to do to ensure that this decision to change from WIDA was the right decision. As far as we know, right? Implementation is the other part of it, but I was incredibly impressed, so I also want to compliment you for the great teamwork and great job. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said yesterday, we have a fabulous team that supports that work at the department, so.
Any other questions or comments? We have a recommendation then on first reading to pass English Language Development Standards. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, World Language Standards. Dr. Christy Hall. Whoa.
Thank you. Good morning, Board. Christy Wall, Assistant Commissioner of Academics and Instructional Strategy, Tennessee Department of Education. TCA 491302A8 authorizes State Board of Education to set policies governing all academic standards and courses of study in public schools. Additionally, State Board Rule 0520-01-03-031 calls for a State Board to adopt standards for each subject area in grades K through 12. The approved standards are to be the basis of planning instructional programs in each local school system. State Board Standards Review Policy 3.209 requires that the State Board review all sets of academic standards at a minimum of every 8 years. The Tennessee Department of Education conducted stakeholder outreach during the 23-24 school year to recruit subject matter experts from the following disciplines within world languages: classical languages, Latin specifically, modern languages, all other world languages, including American Sign Language. These subject matter experts convened in March to recommend revisions to the world language standards. The subject matter experts included representation of elementary to high school educators, district instructional supervisors, and adjunct professors. Districts also submitted input to guide these recommendations, and best practices from professional organizations were utilized during this revision process. This item includes revisions to the current standards document and guidance for the classical and modern languages. Changes included expanding proficiency language and guidance, expanded performance guidelines, and expanded language on information related to heritage speakers, added guidance language about the seal of biliteracy, and added information about how world languages support English language arts literacy skills through skill transference. The department will solicit additional feedback on this item between first and second reading, and the department recommends acceptance of this item on first reading, and the State Board staff concurs with this recommendation. Happy to take questions and further discuss this.
Thank you. We have a recommendation to accept on first reading world language standards. Is there a motion? Mr. Wells moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove seconds. Is there questions or discussions? I've got a couple of questions. Pretty impressive list here.
Yes, sir.
And so what I'd like to know is what percent of our students are able, across the state, take this opportunity to participate in these courses?
That's a wonderful question. In terms of specific student enrollment from this past academic year, I'm happy to pull data and report that back to state board members. On that, I will note that there are 2 units of foreign language or world language requirements for graduation purposes, unless those 2 credits are waived at the local level. And so at least there are 2 elements or 2 credits of world languages that are required for graduation. And so happy to pull that data over enrollment and opportunities for those advanced world language courses for you.
And then when I see the wide variety of these courses, and I think about virtual courses, is there an opportunity, you know, a lot of the schools, particularly rural schools, don't have the opportunity to offer those. Is that something that could be offered virtually, or is that too difficult?
Yeah, another great question. Thank you for that. As I understand, those considerations would be made at the local level. However, if we think about world language courses, particularly in the high school setting and space, oftentimes it's difficult to replicate the learning experience in a virtual classroom that students would experience in a virtual setting. Speaking and listening and writing and collaborating with peers in the class, along with a world languages instructor directly, would be difficult to replicate. However, as I understand, some districts have sought out opportunities and ways to implement some form or fashion of virtual learning.
Thank you. Just the more opportunity we can provide to our students across the state, the better off we are.
Yes, sir.
Other questions or comments? No questions or comments. We do have a recommendation, a motion, and a second to accept the world language standards on first reading. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wall. Next, Education Savings Accounts Program Rule, 052001, 1602, 04, 06, 08, and 11. Ms. Pam Lehman.
Thank you, Chairman and board members. My name is Pam Lehman, and I'm the Director of ESA Outreach at the department. I'm here today to present on first reading revisions to Chapter 0520-01-16, which outlines eligibility and participation requirements for the ESA program. The purpose of these revisions is to align requirements for ESA participating schools with the existing requirements for Category 1, 2, and 3 non-public schools, and to provide additional clarity in select program areas to improve communication and service to ESA schools and families. The specific revisions are as follows: revising the requirements for criminal background checks to align with existing approval requirements for Category 1, 2, and 3 non-public schools, clarifying requirements for schools interested in participating in the ESA program by offering additional options for schools to demonstrate they meet the financial viability requirement for participation. Additionally, these revisions remove references to expense reports throughout to align with how participating families access and expend funds. Currently, the team does not collect expense reports to verify how funds are spent. Instead, all expenses are pre-approved through a rigorous internal process, and each account holder must submit a pre-approval form for review by the department. And once those funds are approved, then the account holder can submit requests for funds disbursement for tuition, fees, and other approved expenses. Finally, this item removes the requirement that the department provide notice of an appeal decision via first-class USPS mail. The department will continue to provide decisions electronically. With that said, Mr. Chairman and board members, the Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first reading, and I'm happy to take any questions that board members may have.
We have a recommendation on first reading for Education Savings Accounts Program Rule 052001, 1602, 04, 06, 08, and 11. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Wells moves. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mullenhour seconds. Is there any questions or discussions? No question or discussions on first reading. All in favor of accepting Education Savings Programs Account Rule, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Lehman. And I'll just also say that every time a lot of times we have new presenters from the department, and I think this may be the first time you're presenting. Welcome, and thank you for doing a good job.
Thank you.
Next item is board meetings policy. Ms. Angie Sanders.
Good morning, Chairman and members. Angie Sanders, General Counsel for the Board. I'm presenting on first reading revisions to the Board Meetings Policy 1.400. This presents revisions to remove requirements for requesting to provide a public comment at a State Board of Education meeting, as these requirements are now required to be in rule rather than policy. Hearing Procedures and Public Meetings Rule 05200901 on final reading at this meeting will now contain these provisions. Additionally, minor clarifying edits were made to other sections of this policy, including clarifying that licensed discipline settlement agreements on the consent agenda do not require a roll call vote, and then also clarifying that the required review of new legislation can take place at either a board workshop or a board meeting. With that, Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
We have a recommendation on board meetings policy 1.400. Is there a motion to accept? Ms. Johnson moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove seconds. Are there questions? No questions? All in favor then for accepting board meetings policies 1.400 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, repeal interscholastic athletics rule. Ms. Sanders.
Yes, Angie Sanders again. I'm presenting to you all a repeal of the interscholastic athletics rule 05200102.08. This is an old rule. The board currently does not have any authority in law anymore to make rules governing the substance of this rule. Such authority rests within the power of local boards of education and/or the individual public schools who may choose to affiliate with an athletic association pursuant to state law. Additionally, regulation of athletic events are left up to those individual athletic associations that schools or LEAs may choose to join. And language that was previously contained in this rule around restrictions for when students can be dismissed for practice or games are already set forth in state law and therefore do not need to be contained in this rule. Separate rules governing student participation in interscholastic athletics mandated by Tennessee Code Annotated 496310 are located in a separate rule, and those are not affected by this repeal. And with that, Chairman, I'm happy to answer questions.
We have a recommendation to repeal interscholastic athletics rule 05200102 and 08. Is there a motion to accept that?
So moved.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove moves. Mr. Wells seconds. Are there any questions for Ms. Sanders? No questions. All in favor then for repealing interscholastic athletics rule 05200102-08 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Next item, repeal preface rule.
Yes, in first reading, again, Angie Sanders, General Counsel, is a repeal of the preface rule 05200101. Such rules are outdated and unnecessary. It's unnecessary because this rule basically restates what's already contained in state law and the state constitution. Additionally, Rule 05200101.02 titled Mission is unnecessary as the state board's mission and master plan for education are instead contained in the board's master plan, which you all review and approve every 3 years pursuant to state law. Additionally, both of these rules have not been updated since 1984 and 1986 respectively. So I think it is about time that they come off the books. And so with that, Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
We have a recommendation to repeal preface rule 05200101. Is there a motion to accept this repeal? Ms. Johnson moves. Is there a second? Ms. McInturf seconds. Are there questions for Ms. Sanders? No questions. Then on first reading, repeal preface rule 05200101 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Next item, Ms. Reed.
Good morning, Allie Reed, Director of Engagement and Accountability for the Board. On first reading is an item to similarly repeal State Board Policy 1.001, as the goals and priorities stated are outdated, and this information has also been moved to the State Board's master plan. Happy to answer any questions.
We have a recommendation to repeal Goals and Objectives Policy 1.001. Is there a motion to accept this repeal?
So moved.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove moves. Is there a second? Ms. McInturf seconds. Are there any questions for Ms. Reed? No questions. All in favor for repealing Goals and Objectives Policy 1.001 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Reed. Next item, Ms. Sanders back up. State enrollment and attendance guidelines.
Yes, Angie Sanders again, presenting on first reading revisions to the state enrollment and attendance guidelines rule 0520-0102-.17. This rule outlines a number of requirements for school attendance in Tennessee. Revisions are proposed to address recent legislation and to move requirements out of state board policy and into rule, therefore allowing state board attendance policy to be repealed. In addition to moving existing language out of policy, the following revisions have been made. Authorizing the student member of the State Board of Education to be counted as present for time spent in the performance of official duties with the board, and that is in accordance with Chapter 549 of the Public Acts of 2024. Clarifying that students cannot be counted as present for post-secondary school visits that occur during the TCAP testing window. Clarifying that students who receive an excused absence or who are counted as present shall be allowed the opportunity to make up any missed work, and that is up to LEA discretion whether or not students with unexcused absences will be allowed to make up any missed work. Allowing schools to post the LEA's attendance policy on their website, and allowing copies of school handbooks to be provided to teachers, administrative staff, and parents, either electronically or in writing. Also clarifying that LEAs who authorize public charter schools either need to ensure that their charter schools have adopted their own attendance policy in compliance with this rule, or with this rule, or that they have, that they are following the LEA's policy. We will hold a rulemaking hearing between first and final reading to collect public feedback on this. And with that, Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. We have a recommendation on state enrollment and attendance guidelines rule 0520-0102.17. Is there a motion to accept that rule? Mr. Wells moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Student member Laurel Cox seconds the motion. Is there discussion? All in favor then for accepting the state enrollment and attendance guidelines signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item. Academic Program Requirements Rule 0520-010303, Mr. Michael Dearline.
Good morning, Chair and members. Michael Dearline, Deputy Executive Director of Policy and Research with the State Board. The Academic Program Requirements Rule sets the requirements for academic programming, including instructional requirements and grading systems for high school students. This includes a provision that stipulates that end-of-course exam scores for grades 9 through 12 must account for between 15 and 25% of a student's final grade in applicable courses. Local boards of education determine the exact percentage of that weight. And following feedback from multiple advocacy groups over the course of the last year, specifically the disability community, the advocacy community, discussions with the department staff as well, and feedback from districts, excuse me, educators and students, we are proposing to reduce the percentage from 15 to 25% down to 5 to 15%. Ryan Holt is not here today, but I do understand there is a statement that he has provided to be read on the record. In addition to this recommendation, we're also proposing to move multiple requirements regarding credit recovery from the high school policy into this rule. We are not changing anything related to credit recovery, just simply moving those items into the rule. With that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dearline. We have a recommendation to accept Academic Program Requirements Rule 0520-0103.03. Is there a motion to accept this? Ms. Johnson moves. Is there a second? Mr. Wells seconds. On discussion, I do know that, say, Mr. Holt had sent in a statement. I will ask Mr. James to please read that statement, Mr. Holt.
Statement of Mr. Ryan Holt, representing the 5th Congressional District. This item arises out of a year of discussions between the State Board and stakeholder groups about how the EOC counts for the final grades of high school students. I believe that for high school students, requiring EOCs to count for more than 15% of a student's final grade is too much. There are a wide range of assessments that occur throughout the school year that, in my view, should have a greater weight in the final grade. High school students are especially important because of the direct impact on high school grades are especially important because of the direct impact on post-secondary opportunities such as college admission and financial aid. The proposed new rule lowers the range from 15 to 25% to 5 to 15% so that local districts can decide what is best for their students. If a district wanted to keep the weight of an EOC assessment at 15%, it would be fine to do so. But under our new rule, a district could lower the weight of an EOC to between 10 or even 5% of the final course grade so that course assignments, as well as other formative and summative assessments, would carry more weight. This new rule is especially important, in my view, for groups of students such as those with learning disabilities, test anxiety, and others experiencing conditions affecting their ability to perform on assessments. As I understand it, there are accommodations that some students would otherwise be entitled to, but which would invalidate their test scores if provided on the EOC, allowing districts to weight the EOCs at as much as 25% of the student's final grade in a course that has serious real-world consequences for those students as they seek post-secondary opportunities. We are not lowering the bar. Nor are we walking away from EOCs. I'm a firm believer in using state tests like the EOC for accountability and data-driven learning. Students should have some skin in the game by the EOC counting, at least in part, for their final grade. But after reflecting on this issue for the past year, 15 to 25% is too much. I apologize for my absence today. I wish I could be there with you. I appreciate your consideration of this item. I urge you to vote yes in approving it.
Thank you, Mr. James. Just for clarification, EOC is end of course. So, other questions or comments? No questions or comments. We do have a recommendation then to approve academic program requirements rule 05200103.03 on first reading. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Before we go into our items for final reading, I'd like to take a break. It's 10:17. Why don't we reconvene at 10:35?
You scared me earlier. I don't know my laptop. I didn't see you. Well, so we've got a training next week, so we can just see some of that. Yeah. Yeah. She gives me, she's the calm. He's like, state law? I don't know.
2-minute warning. Let's get started again. We're now on item number 6, action items, final reading. First item is a special education program services rule. Dr. Jennifer Jordan.
Thank you. Jennifer Jordan, Assistant Commissioner of Special Education and Student Supports at the department. The Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA, requires LEAs to include appropriate, measurable post-secondary goals related to training, education, employment, and independent living skills, as well as the transition services and courses of study needed to assist the student in reaching those goals within the first IEP that will be effect when a student turns 16 years old. The State Board of Education Special Education Program and Service Rule, Chapter 05200109, previously required LEAs to develop a 4-year plan of focused and purposeful high school study, including any necessary transition services that connected the student's goals for high school to the student's post-secondary goals, no later than when the student turned 14 years old or began 9th grade. In 2021, the rule was amended and the requirement to develop a 4-year plan of focused and purposeful high school study was eliminated. Currently, the State Board Rule 05200109.12B only requires LEAs to include age-appropriate transition assessments to include, at a minimum, education, training, and employment for students age 14 and older. In an effort to increase the percentage of students with disabilities who enroll in post-secondary education or training program or who are employed, this item revises Section .12 of the rule to once again require LEAs to include courses of study, transition services, and annual IEP goals that will reasonably enable the student to meet their post-secondary goals in their first IEP that will be in effect when the student turns 14 years old. Additionally, this item makes 2 further minor proposed edits to Section .18 and Section .19 of the rule to align with the state law. First, impartial due process hearing rule 05200109.18 currently confers jurisdiction upon the state's administrative law judges to hear complaints arising under the Individuals with Disabilities Act and rules of the State Board of Education. This proposed amendment clarifies that the state's administrative law judges also have jurisdiction to hear complaints arising under state special education statutes in alignment with Tennessee Code 4910-606A. Second, Civil Action Rule 05200109.19 currently allows parties filing due process complaints to bring an action in a court of competent jurisdiction in accordance with Tennessee Code 45322 and Tennessee Code 4910-601. This proposed amendment would strike the reference to Tennessee Code 4910-601 since that statute merely establishes the procedural safeguards with students with disabilities. The State Board staff held a rulemaking hearing on April 16th, 2024. No public comments were submitted. No revisions were made between first and final rule. The Department of Education recommends approval of this item on final reading. SBE staff concurs with this recommendation.
Thank you. We have a recommendation then for Special Education Program Services Rule 05200109, 12, 18, and 19. Is there a motion to accept this recommendation on final reading? Mr. Wells moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove seconds. Are there any questions or discussions? No question or discussions. This is a rule on final reading. It requires a roll call vote. Mr. Griffin, please call the roll.
Mr. Cobbins. Ms. Cox.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Mr. Holt. Mr. Jensen. Ms. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. McInturf.
Aye.
Mr. Mullenhour.
Aye.
Mr. Wells.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item, English as a second language programs rule. Dr. Jordan?
Yes, sir. Jennifer Jordan, Assistant Commissioner of Special Education and Student Supports. The English as a Second Language ESL Program Rules 05200119 set forth the requirements for the identification, screening, and service delivery for students who are English learners. In 2023, the Tennessee Department of Education ran a competitive procurement process for an English language proficiency screener, assessment, and alt assessment because there are now multiple national vendors of English language proficiency tools from which the state can select. A new suite of assessments, ELPA 21, was adopted through the process. To facilitate the transition from current WIDA assessments to ELPA 21, the SL program rule must be updated to make the references to the English language proficiency assessment generic rather than vendor-specific. The department is also proposing a complementary item, ESL Program Policy 3.207, that further defines this rule by setting forth a specific assessment name, purpose, and cut scores. By having the name of the vendor in the cut scores and policy rather than in rule, the Department of State Board can more readily update assessment requirements for English learners in the future and provide timely updates for districts and school staff. In addition, the department proposes to add co-teaching as an approved delivery model back into rule, as well as additional edits for clarification and improved alignment to best practices for serving English learners. The state board held a rulemaking hearing to collect public feedback prior to the final reading. No comments were submitted. Between first and final reading, the department proposed the following revisions. Further define transition at EL, or English learners, to indicate an English learner in their first 4 years after exiting direct or indirect ESL services. Added detail to describe when students are eligible to take the alternative screener, and minor formatting and numbering corrections. The Department of Education recommends approval of this item on the final reading. The SBE staff concurs with this recommendation.
We have a recommendation on English as a second language program rule 05200119, 01, 03 through 09, 06. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Ms. McInturf moves. Chair Emeritus Hartgrove seconds. Further discussion? This again requires a roll call vote. Mr. Griffin.
Mr. Cobbins. Ms. Cox.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Mr. Holt. Mr. Jensen. Ms. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. McInturf.
Aye.
Mr. Mullenhour.
Aye.
Mr. Wells. Aye. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes.
Motion passes. Next item, English as a second language program policy 3207. Dr. Jordan.
Thank you. Jennifer Jordan, Assistant Commissioner, Special Education and Student Programs from the department. The English as Second Language ESL program policy is a complement to the English as a Second Language program rules 05200119. The policy was repealed in 2022 because all the content in the policy had been moved into rule, making the policy duplicative. However, in 2023, the Tennessee Department of Education ran a competitive procurement process for an English language proficiency screener, assessment, and alternative assessment because now there were multiple vendors of English language proficiency tools from which the state could select. A new assessment suite, ELPA 21, was adopted through the process. To facilitate the transition from WIDA assessment to ELPA 21, the department is proposing to update an update to the language in the ESL program's rule to make references to the English language proficiency assessment generic rather than vendor specific. The department is also proposing this item, a new ESL program policy to further define the rules by setting forth the specific assessment name, purpose, and cut scores.
By having the name in the vendor and cut scores and policy rather than rule, the Department State Board can more readily update assessment requirements for English learners in the future and provide timely updates for districts and school staff if vendors change. Between first and final reading, the department made the following revisions. Added specificity to the name of each screener and assessment. Added a section identifying requirements for students to earn the seal of biliteracy and technical changes to improve clarity. The Department of Education recommends the approval of this item on final reading. The SBE staff concurs with this recommendation.
We have a recommendation as English as a second language program policy 3207. Is there a motion to accept that recommendation?
So moved.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove moves. Is there a second? Mr. Mullenhour seconds. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify, all in favor of approving English as a second language program policy 3207 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, literacy and specialty standards for education preparation policy. Jennifer Nelson.
Hello, I'm the other Jennifer Nelson, Senior Director of Educator Preparation. This item presents the following revisions to the Educator Preparation Policy 5.504. It adds the Agri-Science 612 program components and specialty area standards into the Career and Technical Education Academic Specialty Area Program. Additionally, a revision is being made to the agricultural education to remove Agri-Science 612 and replace it with Agricultural Education 612. This revises the special education specialty area program components to reflect the new Council for Exceptional Children, or CEC standards. Revises the health and physical education program component to be aligned to the Society of Health of Physical Educators, or SHAPE, Initial Physical Education Teacher Education Standards. Revises the Early Education Foundational Literacy Skills Standard to reflect the term etymology. Between the first and final reading, revisions were made in response to feedback from state board members at the February 2024 meeting. These revisions include the following. Revises the middle and secondary literacy skills standards to reflect the term reading specialist. Removes the early childhood program component to align with the NAEYC professional standards for early childhood educators, and revises the gifted education program component to align with the CEC gifted educational professional standards. The Department of Education recommends approval of this item on final reading, and the SBE staff concurs with this recommendation.
Thank you. We have a recommendation for literacy and specialty area standards for education preparation policy 5.505. Is there a motion to accept? Ms. Johnson moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove seconds. Are there questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I do have a suggested edit, and I want to reference page 40 of the clean version, number 6, under special education hearing, B, program components, number 1. The language is a little bit inconsistent with language that's used in other portions, but let me read this. It says, coursework shall emphasize the application of the CEC standards in instruction for students with deaf and hard of hearing. In another section, you refer to the blind and visually impaired. And you reference students who are blind and visually impaired. So I recommend that in section 6, item B1, that you change with to who are. And I don't know that that requires an amendment, but.
I think what I can do is ask the board under unanimous consent if they're okay with non-substantive changes as is. Is there any objection to asking the staff to make non-substantive changes such as what Chair Emeritus Hartgrove is recommending? If there are no objections to that, then we will give that responsibility to the state board staff, if you're okay with that. All right? Other questions? Mr. Wells, Mr. Mullenhour? Mr. Wells? Oh,
I'll say, if this is the only change, can we just make the change on the fly?
it would have to be by a motion, a second, and then this is a rule, so it'd have to be a roll call vote, and then we could do it.
Okay,
But by doing it by unanimous consent like this, I think we're okay.
okay. Is it typical, this is the first time I'm aware of that we've taken the approach of essentially seating undefined discretion to make, non-substantive changes to the board stuff. I guess I'm just a little hesitant.
It's Mr. James.
Mr. Mullenhour, it has been done before, but right now, like, under your comments, you'd be reserving the right to object, right? And making the comment. You could narrow it down if you wanted to, but what the chairman has proposed as a unanimous consent request is to allow any non-substantive issue to be resolved. Not only this one that he's talking about, but say there's a period that should be there that isn't there, or something like that, that could be done. But
Non-substantive as defined by our legal counsel, our legal?
Well, it's just non-substantive means not changing the effect of the proposal.
I agree, but it may require, it still, I think would require our legal counsel to agree that we are not changing that. But if you're objecting to it, then it's not by unanimous consent, we'll go the other way, so it's up to you.
Yeah, I will object to it, and
Okay.
obviously not because I don't trust that our team and everybody's here intent is pure. It's just that, when we get into the murky waters of what's substantive, what's non-substantive, and as we all know, sometimes the placement of a period can change everything. So I will politely and respectfully object to that approach.
Okay, so we do not have unanimous consent. Can we have a motion to accept non-substantive as defined by, or what?
You could actually, since it's just this one issue, you could move to approve it on, first of all, you could move to amend it, and the amendment itself could be done by voice vote. And then the subsequent motion following that would be a motion to adopt as amended.
Do you want to make a motion then?
So I'm going to make a motion to modify item 6B1 to read, "Coursework shall emphasize the application of the CEC standards in instruction for students who are deaf and hard of hearing."
We have a motion to amend. Is there a second to that motion? Ms. Sanders, you got a comment?
I think Ms. Hartgrove said it was paragraph 6, but I believe she meant to say paragraph 8.
I'm sorry, what?
Paragraph 8.
It's paragraph 8B.
It's 6B. 6B is in boy. Program components. Number 1 on page 40 of the clean version. Because it says with deaf and hard of hearing.
I'm looking at the
It's students who are deaf and hard of hearing, and there's another section, as I mentioned, that refers to students who are blind and visually impaired. It says who are blind and visually impaired. So it's a consistency issue, and students are with deaf and hard of hearing doesn't make sense to me anyway. So who are deaf and hard of hearing? So what are you seeing that I'm not seeing?
Okay. No, you're correct. I was looking at the red line, and the red line seems to have the incorrect numbering.
Right, correct.
6B, it's page 40 on the clean
On the
version.
clean.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second to that motion to make that change on page 40?
I will second that motion.
Mr. Mullenhour seconds. Is there, I'll just say, Ms. Johnson, if you want to say, push your button and speak, okay? Don't just wave your hand, I might not get you, but Mr. Mullenhour gets seconded. Any further discussion on that change? No discussion. All in favor then for accepting the change as, you want to read that again, Chair Emeritus Hartgrove?
Sure. Yes. coursework shall emphasize the application of the CEC standards in instruction for students who are deaf and hard of hearing.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're back on our main. Did you have any other changes? Yeah. Any other comments or changes on literacy and specialty area standards for educator preparation, 5505? None. We have a motion. We have an amended motion. All in favor then. This does not require a roll call vote. So all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Nissen. Mr. Durline, Standards Review Policy.
Hello again, Michael Durline, Deputy Executive Director of Policy and Research with the State Board. This Standards Review Policy 3.209 codifies the timeline for review of academic and CTE standards, both those facilitated by State Board and the Department, and aligns with a law that has shifted core academic standards review from a 6-year cycle to an 8-year cycle. No changes have been made to this policy since first reading, but I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
We have a recommendation on Standards Review Policy 3209. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove moves. Is there a second? Ms. McIntosh seconds. Is there further discussion? No discussion. All in favor of accepting Standards Review Policy 3.209 on final reading signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Mr. Durline, Graduation Requirements Rule.
Thank you. This rule outlines the academic and instructional requirements for courses and programs of study within public education. The primary recommendation, as you may recall from the first reading of this item, includes a revision to remove the requirement that students take a mathematics course or approved mathematics course substitution in each of the 4 years of high school, and replaces it with a requirement that students continue to take 4 credits of math, but that they may do so within a 3-year period. State Board staff held a rulemaking hearing on this rule on April 16th. One comment was submitted, and as that comment was received, a minor revision was made to clarify the implementation date for that change if the board were to pass this. And we also made a minor edit to reference the English as a second language programs policy for the purpose of identifying students who qualify for the seal of biliteracy. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
We have a recommendation on final reading for Graduation Requirements Rule 0520010306. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Wells moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Cox seconds. Further questions or comments? Just to clarify for people, this does not change the 4 credits of math requirement. It just says you can do that in 3 years. You don't have to take math all 4 years of your high school.
Correct.
Other questions or comments? This does require a roll call vote. Mr. Griffin.
Mr. Cobbins. Ms. Cox.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Mr. Holt. Mr. Jensen. Ms. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. McInturf.
Aye.
Mr. Mullenhour.
Aye.
Mr. Wells. Aye. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes.
A motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Durline. You're up again. Uniform Grading Systems Rule.
Thank you. This rule establishes the statewide uniform grading scale to be used by LEAs for students enrolled in grades 9 through 12 for the purpose of application for post-secondary financial assistance. The proposal is to revise the percentage points used to calculate semester average grades for dual enrollment courses, shifting from a 4 percentage point weight to a 5 percentage point weight. Beginning with courses completed in the 24-25 school year, State Board staff held a rulemaking hearing on April 16th. No comments were submitted, and there were no changes made to this item between first and final reading. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
We have a recommendation on Uniform Grading System Rule for final reading. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation?
So moved.
Ms. Cox moves. Is there a second? Ms. McInturf seconds. Any further discussion or questions? This requires a roll call vote. Mr. Griffin?
Mr. Cobbins. Ms. Cox.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove?
Aye.
Mr. Holt? Mr. Jensen? Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. McInturf? Mr. Mullenhour?
Aye.
Mr. Wells?
Aye.
Mr. Eby?
Aye.
Chairman? Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Durline. Next, hearing procedures and public meetings rule, Ms. Angie Sanders.
Thank you, Chairman. Angie Sanders, General Counsel for the Board. Presenting on final reading, hearing procedures and public meetings rule 05200901. This revision renames this chapter and establishes a new rule governing requests to speak at public meetings. Revisions to Rule Section .01 add a title for the rule where one previously did not exist and also update citations. We've also created a new Rule Section .02 to outline the requirements for the public to request to provide a public comment at a meeting. Previously, those were contained in policy, which you all approved a repeal of on first reading. And those are all now being moved into this rule. We did hold a rulemaking hearing on April 16th to collect public feedback. We had one public comment, and we did make additional edits to the rule between first and final reading in response to comments that were made at the February board meeting, as well as feedback from the Attorney General's office. These edits include clarifying that the rule governs requests to provide public comments at a meeting, but does not affect the ability of the public to provide written comments to board members at any time. Removing an exemption to the 48-hour notice requirement for educators subject to license discipline. Expanding the list of persons and organizations who are exempt from the 10-speaker limit to include any person, organization, or agency who is the subject of an action being taken by the board. And then we added examples into that, including teacher license discipline actions, educator preparation, provider approvals, and approval or denial of an application that is required to be approved by the board. And that was in response to comments received from Mr. Mullenhour at the February meeting. We've added language allowing the chair to expand the 10-comment limit based on the circumstances, clarified the process for requesting an accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and then other minor clarifying edits. And with that, Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
We have a recommendation then for hearing procedures and public meetings rule 052009. Is there a motion to accept that? Mr. Wells moves, Ms. McInturf seconds. Are there questions for Ms. Sanders? No questions. This does require a roll call vote. Mr. Griffin.
Mr. Cobbins? Ms. Cox? Ms. Hartgrove?
Is something wrong with it? Aye.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, what am I doing?
Mr. Holt?
Sorry. Aye.
Ms. Jensen? Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. McInturf?
Aye.
Mr. Mullenhour?
Aye.
Mr. Wells?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes.
Motion passes. Next item, public request rule. Ms. Sanders.
Thank you, Chairman. Angie Sanders, again, General Counsel for the Board. Presenting on final reading, Public Records Request Rule 0520-1501. Tennessee Code Annotated 107-503 requires all state government entities to promulgate rules governing public records requests. And this rule was originally promulgated by the board in 2019 in compliance with that law. It sets forth rules governing the process by which Tennessee citizens may request to inspect or copy public records maintained by the board. These revisions were approved by the board on final reading back in November of 2023, so they should be very familiar to you. During the rule promulgation process, it was discovered that language that authorized the charging of fees for redacting records for inspection needed to be removed. So we therefore then withdrew that rule, had a brand new rulemaking hearing on this, and with the one change was removing that one sentence where that language was an issue. The rest of the language is exactly the same as what the board approved back in November of 2023. We did not receive any comments at that rulemaking hearing, Chairman, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a recommendation for Public Records Request Rule 0520-1501. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Mr. Mullenhour moves. Is there a second? Ms. McInturf seconds. Are there any questions? All in favor then for passing Public Records Request Rule, oh no, this is roll call vote. Mr. Griffin.
Mr. Cobbins. Ms. Cox.
Aye.
Ms. Hartgrove.
Aye.
Mr. Holt. Mr. Jensen. Ms. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. McInturf. Mr. Mullenhour. Mr. Wells. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes.
Motion passes. Earlier today, I highlighted that we had the honor of being presented by a TDOE, a person for her first time in front of the board. It's sort of bittersweet, but I have to announce that Ms. Sanders, this will be her last presentation to the board. Ms. Sanders will be leaving the board staff next month, and I thought it'd be an opportunity for board members to say a few words about what she's meant to this staff over the last several years. I know Mr. Mullenhour has said he'd like to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start. I'll just say that this team was the first that I'd ever interacted with deeply as part of our state government. And I didn't know exactly what to expect, but I was thoroughly impressed by what I found. And as a citizen, as a parent, as a taxpayer, as a Tennessean, I'm proud of what I found. And Angie, I think that you embody that. There are others on this team here who are certainly a part of that as well, but I think that you are, you exemplify that in a way that really helps set the tone for everyone else. And I was impressed. I'm sad to see you go, but I know you're going to do very, very well. I'm going to miss some of the back and forth debate over commas and periods and so forth that we've had over time. But I know that you're going to do very well, and I'm going to have to get over it. I'm going to have to go over Nathan at some point, but he is. You'll have a lot of fun, and I hate to see you go, but I'm proud of you and proud for you.
Thank you.
Other comments? Chair Emeritus Hartgrove, I figure you'd have something to say.
I always have something to say about Angie Sanders. I think you said this to me, and I knew it before, but I have had the pleasure of working with you the longest since I've been, I think I'm the oldest in many factors, but certainly my tenure on the board. Angie was with the state board staff at that time, and so you were joining around the same time I was coming on the board. So I have had the pleasure of working with her all this time, and she has been a rock star and has done just exemplary work. And when I first heard the news, which was on my prep call for the board meeting, I was stunned, and there are not a whole lot of things that stun me. But when you lose somebody, and I was in management for a long time, and if you had a superstar, you knew that they would be attractive to other employers. And so, it's not always surprising, but sometimes I get stunned. And I was stunned to hear the news. But I am thrilled for you. I told her that. It's difficult to imagine the state board without you, the work that you've done to make sure that your team, that the board, that we're prepared, we understand the law, you keep us on the straight and narrow, you ensure that the rules and the policies are in alignment with the law, and you have grounded us completely throughout this time. And so losing you is I don't want to say bittersweet because it's bitter. I'm thrilled for you, and I am thrilled for the person you're going to work for. So congratulations on that, and thank you for all that you've done during your tenure here at the state boards. Wishing you all the best.
Any other comments? Mr. Wells?
As I told Mr. Morrow at dinner last night, he's dead to me for for the rest of his life. But I probably can't say anything that hasn't already been said. You are an amazing state employee. As a former state employee, I was a little bit of the same way. When I first came, I thought very differently of state employees until I got here. And probably the hardest job I ever had and the most hours I ever worked was as a state employee. And you're definitely one of those. But I will say, as a parent, we all want to be able to work closely with our children and to be a part of their lives, even whenever we work a lot. And so I think you have an amazing opportunity there to where you can take your passion of education. I'm sure Mr. Morrow is going to be a great boss. And I think it's going to bring a lot of quality of life for you and your family. So I'm very excited for you and hope to stay in touch.
Ms. McIntyre.
Angie. So Lillian probably has known you the longest. Other than Marcia, I've known you the least amount of time, but you were just so welcoming last summer, and February was really hard, our meeting, and we had a lot of tears on the phone, but you are so approachable and you're professional, and those are two things that are very rare, and I'm very jealous of the people that are going to be working under you, but thank you for everything you've done for us.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Cox.
So I know every board member here understands the appointment and onboarding difficulties and confusion. And especially as a high schooler, I didn't know what was going on. But there were numerous phone calls with Angie where she was explaining some of the legal terms that I didn't know existed before joining this board. And she definitely was a beacon of light in some very confusing times for me trying to come onto this board, knowing that I didn't know what was going on. And she's definitely made a massive impact just in the short time that I've been on here. I just wanted to let you know that publicly.
And I'll just say a few words. Is I can't think of anybody who does their job more thoroughly than you do and does it in a quiet way. And I always had the confidence that I would know that what I was, being told was within the law. I always told Angie her job was to keep me out of jail. You did that. But seriously, I never once questioned the thought process that you went through and the thoroughness and your guidance on what we should do and how we should act. You will be greatly missed. But as I said, one of my favorite songs is Hotel California. You can check out anytime you want, but you'll never leave. We will be calling you. But we do wish you the very, very best, and it's just been a pleasure, and hopefully our paths will continue to cross. Okay.
I don't really trust myself to say anything, but I'll just say it makes my heart so happy to hear just the impact that you've made in this work, and we feel it. And now I'm going to stop.
I really appreciate it. Now I'm crying on a public meeting.
I started it.
This board is so amazing and has been a part of my life for the past 10 years. And I know you all are going to continue to do amazing things. And the staff is so wonderful. And Sarah is an amazing captain. And she will continue to do that. And I know that she will find someone just as amazing to come in and fill my shoes. And you all have become beyond coworkers and board members. Y'all are friends. And I've learned so much under each and every one of you, especially Sarah and Bob and Lillian. Y'all have taught me so much. And so I'm just forever grateful for the opportunity to serve the state and students and just to make a little bit of an impact. And it was a very, very hard decision to leave. And you are right, you're not going to get rid of me. I'm sure I will still be calling, and you can call me. So thank you for your kind words. I do appreciate it a lot.
Let's give her a round of applause. Back to work. Amy Owen, next item, graduation substitution policy.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. I think I'm example A of coming back to the Hotel California. But I'll miss my co-conspirator. So it's great to see you all this morning. I am presenting graduation substitutions policy 3.103. This item outlines allowable course substitutions for graduation requirement credits. This item was approved on final reading at your February meeting, after which we received several questions from districts related to courses where students earn a half credit as opposed to a full credit. This was specifically about JROTC 3 and whether it may substitute for both the half credit of U.S. government and the half credit of personal finance, which is how it had historically been interpreted and how it is listed in the course code management system. So we're bringing this item back with that technical correction on first and final reading to align with some longstanding district practices and make sure that districts are comfortable scheduling students for the upcoming school year, knowing that they're within the bounds of this policy. We also added a footnote related to English learners. This is already defined in the English as a Second Language Program's rule that students who are English learners in high school may substitute 2 credits of ESL for 2 credits of English Language Arts. So again, not a new requirement, but adding it as a footnote because that is an applicable substitution for a subset of our students. Again, this item is recommended for approval on first and final reading, and I'm happy to take questions.
We have a recommendation for graduation substitution policies, first and final reading 3.103. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Chair Emeritus Hartgrove moves. Is there a second? Ms. McIntosh seconds. Further discussion? All in favor then for accepting graduation substitution policies signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item. Diane Burton.
Good morning, Diana Burton, Director of Non-Public School Programs for the department. State Board of Education Policy 3.500 sets forth the list of accrediting agencies approved by the State Board to accredit Category 2 and 3 private schools in Tennessee. State Board Rule 0520-07-02-.03 establishes the criteria for approval of Category 2 accrediting agencies for a period of 5 years. This rule tasks the department with developing and reviewing applications for interested agencies and recommending to the State Board whether each agency's application should be approved or denied. Under the current policy, 9 accrediting agencies are approved to accredit Category 2 schools. 8 of these agencies reapplied for approval. In addition, 3 new agencies submitted applications. Agencies submitted applications to the department in November and December of 2023. The department reviewed the applications and completed 1 school leader interview for each applicant in January and February of 2024. During the review process, 1 agency withdrew its application from consideration due to misalignment with current agency goals. And after a review of all applications, the department recommends updating State Board Policy 3.500 to approve the list of agencies that you have before you as authorized Category 2 accrediting agencies for the next 5-year approval cycle from July 2024 through July of 2029. The Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first and final reading. The SBE staff concurs with this recommendation.
We have a recommendation for Category 2 and 3 private school credibility agencies policies 3500. Is there a motion to accept that? Mr. Wells moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Molinar seconds. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor then for accepting Category 2 and 3 private school accreditation agencies policies 3500 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is Taylor Reed, Professional Assessments for Tennessee Educator Policies 5105.
Hello again, Taylor Reed, Senior Director of Licensure. Tennessee State Board of Education Professional Assessments Policy for Tennessee Educators 5.105 outlines general assessment requirements as well as pedagogical, specialty area content, and foundational literacy skills assessments. To ensure consistency and accuracy, this item proposes the following revisions to Section 2, Pedagogical Assessment Requirements. Identifies EdTPA Title Agricultural Education as a pedagogical assessment for endorsements Agricultural Education 612 and AgriScience 612, and removes endorsement 450 Consumer Homemaking 512 as the endorsement is retired. To ensure consistency and accuracy, this item proposes the following revisions to Section 3, Specialty Area Content Assessments. Identifies Praxis 5701 Agriculture as the specialty area content assessment for endorsements Agricultural Education 612 and AgriScience 612, revises the Business Education 612 endorsement to reflect the appropriate endorsement name and denotes the endorsement as a qualifying endorsement for assessment purposes, makes revisions to the English as a second language, health and wellness, and physical education endorsement areas to add the applicable K-8 and 612 split endorsements, amends the Integrated Early Childhood Pre-K-3 endorsement to include all required assessments and associated assessment acceptance dates as previously approved by the State Board, and amends and identifies new assessments for Family and Consumer Sciences 612, Special Education Comprehensive K-12, Interventionist K-8, and Interventionist 612, as current assessments are in the process of regeneration by ETS, the assessment vendor. The Department of Education recommends acceptance of this item on first and final reading. The SBE staff concurs with this recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. We have a recommendation for professional assessments for Tennessee Educator Policies 5105. Is there a motion to accept? I'll move to accept. Thank you, Mr. Wells. Second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, state-approved textbooks. Dr. Christy Wall.
Thank you. Good morning again. Christy Wall, Assistant Commissioner of Academics and Instructional Strategy, Tennessee Department of Education, bringing forward Section D, Mathematics Reasoning for Decision-Making, to be added to the state-approved textbook list. The State Textbook and Instructional Materials Quality Commission has prepared a final list of textbooks and instructional resources for the single mathematics course going through the section Schedule D adoption cycle associated with TCA 49-1-302A-9. States that the duty of the State Board of Education and that the State Board has the power to prescribe the use of textbooks and other instructional materials based on recommendations of the State Textbook and Instructional Materials Quality Commission for the various subjects taught or used in conjunction with the public schools. TCA 49-62202A requires that the State Textbook and Instructional Materials Commission prepare a list of standard edition of textbooks and instructional materials for approval by the State Board for the use in public schools of the state. The law also provides that the commission may recruit and appoint an advisory panel of expert teachers and other experts in each subject area or grade level to advise the commission on textbook and instructional materials selection. During this last mathematics standard revision, the standards review panel worked closely with State Board staff and felt that a new course needed to be developed to replace bridge mathematics and applied mathematical concepts. The standards for this new course were developed using input from educators, also Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology, our TCAP partners, and industry partners. The result was a course developed with standards pivoting from ACT score-focused course to one that is more in line with students' post-secondary aspirations, specifically focusing on the mathematical needs of students aspiring to attend a TCAT, enlist in the military, or go directly into workforce. Because the standards review timeline was delayed and because of this brand new course in Tennessee, the instructional materials adoption process was delayed for this singular mathematics course to provide publishers the opportunity to develop a Tennessee-specific material for this unique course. A call for bids for instructional materials for the mathematics reasoning and decision-making course was issued in the fall of 2023, which resulted in a single material being bid in March of 2024. Following all processes by the commission, the material was reviewed using an approved rubric by advisory panelists and passed by the commission on March 26th, 2024, to be recommended to the State Board as an approved material for this course. The material that passed review is as follows: Thinking Mathematically, the 8th edition by Blitzer. The material was found to include all Tennessee academic standards for the course and met the scoring requirements set forth by the commission. As there was a single material reviewed and it passed the commission's review, there was no need to run a publisher's appeal process. This item presents this instructional material for consideration by the State Board to be approved for teaching mathematics, reasoning, and decision-making in Tennessee. Once approved by the State Board, the decision will be shared with the commission and then shared with districts to begin their adoption process for this course. The recommendation is on a first and final reading, and the State Board staff concurred. Happy to take any questions or discussion on this item.
Thank you. We have a recommendation on state-approved textbooks, Section D, Mathematics Reasoning for Decision-Making. Is there a motion to accept this recommendation? Ms. McIntyre, did I see you move? You have a second. Ms. Johnson, did you second?
Wait, yes.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any discussions? No discussions. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Wall.
Thank you.
Next item, yours too.
Yes, sir. Christy Wall, Assistant Commissioner, Academics and Instructional Strategy at the Tennessee Department of Education, bringing forward on final reading the 2024-2025 Special Course Code approvals. The State Board of Education Rule 0520-01-03.03, Section 4, and Special Courses Policy 3.201 allow local education agencies the ability to apply to offer special courses not listed on the state board's approved high school course policy 3.205. The Department of Education annually reviews the special course and special programs of study applications and recommends courses for approval for 1, 3, or 6-year intervals. The item presented to the board for approval the list of all special course applications received by the department for the 2024-2025 school year, along with their approval recommendations, and if applicable, the number of years in which each of these special courses are recommended for approval. Happy to take any questions or discussion on this item as well.
We have a recommendation on special course approvals. Is there a motion to accept this recommendation? Mr. Wells moves. Ms. McInturf seconds. Are there questions or comments? I have one question. For the courses that were denied, why were they denied? Were they denied because an existing course another course already existed? And if that's the case, then why would the district be submitting for a special course?
Thank you for that question. So with this particular process of the special course code review, the courses that come to the department for recommendation of approval and that is granted by the board either get a 1-year approval, a 3-year approval, or a 6-year approval. Oftentimes when districts have their special courses approved in those different time intervals, when that time is up, they simply are prompted to reapply and submit another special course code application. Oftentimes during that duration, there have been permanent courses that have been added and updated to the state board policy that would no longer necessitate a special course code application. I will note we have in our active course code management and catalog, we have almost 2,000 active high school courses that are permanent course codes that are able to be used for districts and their planning purposes and their academic programming. And so there is a plethora of courses to pick from, but oftentimes in translation with the special courses being brought back into the department annually, if there's a course that aligns more closely, that is a permanent course code that can be utilized to meet graduation requirements, whereas our special course codes are only utilized for elective purposes, we often, determine to disapprove or not approve or recommend to approve, and instead utilize a permanent course code. I hope that answers your question.
It does very much. I think it's important for people to recognize, like you say, those, the permanent courses can meet graduation requirements, but the special can't.
Yes, sir.
And also 2,000 courses being offered to our students. That's amazing.
Yes, precisely 1,947 active high school academic course codes going into the 24-25 school year.
Excellent.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Molinaro.
Thank you. I had a similar question, and it's my understanding, just to kind of sum this up, that in each of the instances in which a course was denied, the board actually gave a recommended or available course code. Is that correct?
That's
And
correct.
Just looking at the attachment? Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yes,
great
sir.
work.
Any other questions? We have a recommendation, a motion, and a second to approve special course approvals for 2024, 2025. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Wall.
Thank you.
Next, state minimum salary schedule for fiscal year 2024, 25. Ms. Mary Ann Dursky.
Good morning, Mary Ann Dursky, Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Education. I'm here to talk this morning about the state minimum salary schedule for fiscal year 2024-25. Tennessee Code annotated 49-3-105E allows the General Assembly to restrict a portion of the annual increase to the Tennessee Investment in Student Achievement, or TISA, base funding for for the sole purpose of providing salary increases to existing educators. The fiscal year 24-25 budget restricts $125 million of TISA funds for this purpose. Pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 49-3-306A1, the Commissioner of Education is required to annually present and submit to the State Board of Education for approval a state salary schedule for licensed personnel. The salary schedule must include a base salary for licensed personnel with a bachelor's degree and 0 years of experience. Licensed personnel with more training and experience must receive higher salaries than the established base salary. The current state minimum salary schedule includes a base salary of $42,000. In accordance with Chapter 437 of the Public Acts of the 2023 legislative session, now codified in Tennessee Code Annotated 4-3-306A3, the minimum salary for educators will increase to $44,500 for the 2024-25 school year and to $50,000 by the 2026-27 school year. In 2013, the State Board of Education revised the structure of the state minimum salary schedule to provide additional compensation flexibility to school districts while maintaining a commitment to salary improvements, especially for teachers at or near the state minimum. The proposed 2024-25 schedule continues to address these two policy goals. Tennessee Code Annotated 49-1-212 requires that the department prepare a fiscal analysis of any policy, rule, or regulation proposed to the State Board of Education. Based on April TISA projections, it is estimated that 78 districts will be required to increase at least one level of their local salary schedule to comply with the new state minimum salary schedule. For all these districts, their share of the $125 million restricted for improving existing educators' salaries under TISA provides the necessary funding to meet this required expense. Approximately 2,379 educators will be impacted by the increase to the minimum salary schedule. The Department of Education recommends approval of this item on first and final reading. The State Board of Education staff concurs with this recommendation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Stursky. We have a recommendation on state minimum salary schedule for fiscal year 2024-25. Is there a motion to accept this? Mr. Wells moves. Ms. McInturf seconds. Is there questions or discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Mullenhour.
I had a question and then a comment. My question is, in one of the, I guess attachment number, what's titled attachment number 2, it lists, I guess by county, the amount of money that we would anticipate being used to increase the base salary. That's how I'm understanding this report to read. So it totals $2.5 million. But there's $125 million that's available. What's happening to the other $123 million?
Thank you for that question. The balance of those $125 million will be used by districts to improve salaries of their existing educators in whatever way they and their board see fit. This could be an increase to their salary schedule, could be bonuses, stipends, but it will be used to increase all educators. The amount on this page is just what portion of that $125 million is needed to get everybody to the new minimum.
Excellent, thank you. So just to rephrase that, we're putting $2.5 million into raising the minimums to the required threshold, and then the other $123 million is available for discretionary increases in salary, incentives, and so forth. Correct?
That is correct, and
Okay.
that $125 million is restricted for that purpose. It must be
Right.
used for existing educators.
Okay, and with that, let me read, I think you read this a few minutes ago, but I just want to highlight this as part of this item. This is part of the cover sheet. Because TISA is a funding plan and not a spending plan, each district will utilize its additional salary funds to meet its unique compensation needs for its existing educators. Districts are not required to provide across-the-board pay increases based solely on seniority or education attainment, but rather have the ability and the flexibility to determine areas of need and adjust compensation structures accordingly. So what I'm understanding, and I guess what I want to just kind of highlight a little bit for anybody who may not appreciate the importance of this. There's $123 million now-ish, $122.5 million, that are available to the districts for salary and bonuses and incentives this year. And they have the full flexibility to decide who gets that and what either after the fact bonuses they're going to offer or what incentives they're going to offer to the teachers who are members of their team. This is again one of these things that it'd be easy for us to gloss over this. It's really important, the fact that A, that the funding's being made available, and then B, that it's not tied to the number of years that a person's been employed or the number of degrees that they've attained. Really what we're trying to do is both reward and incentivize excellence, and that discretion is left to the local school districts. So thank you, excellent work.
Thank you, Mr. Muller. Other questions or comments? Ms. Johnson?
Just a quick question. So am I correct in assuming that the money is there to bump up the minimum salary? And it is not delegated across the districts evenly. It's delegated to the schools that are, or the professionals that do not have a minimum salary at this point?
Thank you for that question. The $125 million is distributed to all of the districts based on their ADM, their average daily membership. So each district gets their proportionate share of the $125 million.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to thank you for presenting the tables the way that you presented it, because I think what you're showing is there's money available across the districts to lift that bottom salary up. And then, as we're talking about before, then there's additional monies to continue to increase. But it was very helpful to me the way that you presented it. We certainly thank the governor and the legislature for continuing to raise those salaries. I think we're supposed to be at 50,000 by 2026 and 2027 or something like that.
That's correct.
And so that's great. So thank you for all your work. So we have a recommendation, we have a motion and a second. All in favor for increasing the state minimum salary schedule for 2024 and 2025? Well, first, was there any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Dursky.
Thank you.
Next item, Local Education Authority Alternative Salary Schedule, Ms. Brooke Amos.
Hello again, Brooke Amos, Assistant Commissioner of Human Capital with the department. State Board Strategic Compensation Policy 5.600 permits LEAs to meet the requirements of differentiated pay through the adoption of an alternative salary schedule approved by the State Board. Alternative salary schedules are those that deviate from the state minimum salary schedule. An alternative salary schedule uses some other component, often performance criteria, in addition to or in lieu of education and experience to determine base pay. Districts are required to submit alternative salary schedules for reapproval every 3 years. However, Policy 5.600 states that if substantive changes are proposed during the 3-year approval cycle, the district must contact the department to determine if State Board consideration and approval is necessary. 4 districts, Gibson County Special School District, Johnson County, Lincoln County, and Sequatchie County, are seeking reapproval of their alternative salary schedules with no changes. 2 districts, Jefferson County and Ray County, are seeking reapproval with revisions. The Department of Education recommends approval of this item on first and final reading. The State Board staff concur with this recommendation. Happy to take any questions.
We have a recommendation. Is there a motion for acceptance? I'm not sure. We're not going to vote until we have a quorum. I don't think, how many do we have to have a quorum?
You have to have 6 members.
Okay, so we'll have to hold the vote for a few minutes. But we can go ahead and make a motion and discuss if there's a motion to accept the alternative salary schedules. Ms. McInturf moves. I'll look this way for a second. Ms. Cox seconds. All right, are there any questions for Ms. Amos? See, you're not the next one on the list either. Mr. Here he goes. You give us a
Here comes our
quorum now,
quorum.
so.
It's okay.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the alternative salary schedules for local education agencies. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Davis. Next item is annual performance goals, AMOs. Mr. Sheng Wei. Yay. Ms. Sheng Wei.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Shang-Ye Ho. I'm the Senior Director of Accountability and Reporting at the Department of Education. I'm here today to present the annual performance goals, which is measured by annual measurable objectives, also known as AMOs, for the 23 and 24 school year. TCA 49-1-602 requires the State Board of Education, in conjunction with the Commissioner, to establish appropriate performance goals and measures for schools and LEAs. The performance goals and measures must include at a minimum student achievement, student growth, and other appropriate indicator of performance. AMOs, known to school as annual measurable objectives, provide schools and districts with targets which help interpret recent performance and prioritize future efforts. Unlike other states, Tennessee sets each of these targets individually for each school and district and for each student group, using the most recent available performance as the starting point for each goal. AMO targets are yearly targets for improving performance based on prior year results. School AMO targets expect school to decrease the percentage of students whose performance does not meet the standard by half over the course of 8 years. Double AMO targets expect the percent of students not meeting the standard to decrease by half in 4 years. AMO targets are rounded to 1 decimal place. The department only sets AMO targets when a school has at least 30 counts or more valid tests or students in the prior year. The AMO targets formula for all federal accountability indicators are presented in the cover sheet. At school level, the department calculates AMOs for achievement, chronically out of school, graduation rate, and ready graduate. At district level, the AMO is calculated for achievement, chronically out of school, English language proficiency assessment, and graduation rate. The AMO targets align with the requirement of federal accountability in the Every Student Success Act and provide measurements for all student groups, which include economically disadvantaged students, students from major racial and ethnic groups, students with disabilities, and English learners. The Department of Education recommends approval of this item on first and final reading. The State Board of Education staff concurs with this recommendation. At this time, I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you. We have a recommendation for the approval of the annual performance goals, AMO objectives for 2023, 2024. Is there a motion to accept those? Mr. Wells moves. Is there a second? Ms. McInturff seconds. Are there questions or comments? I just have one. We had a lot of discussion last year about AMOs. I think it's still important for everyone to recognize that AMOs are important from a federal accountability standpoint. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? None, then we have a recommendation for approval of annual performance goals, AMOs 2023, 2024. All in favor, first and final reading. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Yeho.
Thank you.
Charter School Governing Body Training Policy, Ms. Allie Reed.
Hello again, Allie Reed, Director of Engagement and Accountability for the board. On first and final reading is the board policy that includes the list of approved training courses for charter school governing body members. This is for them to complete as part of their annual training requirements that are outlined in state board rule. The state board received 8 governing body training course applications by the February 15th deadline this year from 4 prospective course providers, and those applications were reviewed by state board appointed advisory committee who voted to recommend 5 of the 8 for your approval. The recommended courses are listed in this policy, and the advisory committee's evaluation rubrics with the objective reasons for their recommendations was also included in your packet and is available on the public agenda. The rubrics are also shared with the applicants, so they know the reasons for the recommendation or reasons for denial, so that they can make those corrections should they choose to apply again next year. Training courses are valid for 3 years unless otherwise noted in the policy, and happy to answer any questions.
We have a recommendation for charter school governing body training policy, 6.112. I will move to accept those, and if we can have a second, then we can further discuss. Ms. McIntyre, my head just kind of goes this way. I would say that I served on the committee that evaluated these, and Ally does an exceptional job of preparing the committee. It includes members, district superintendents, and other members in education across Tennessee. And we went through each one of those and had, I think, very good discussions about why we accept and why we didn't accept. I don't know, Ms. Reed, if you want to make any comments about reasons that they weren't accepted. Is basically they didn't follow the standards and the rules, but they were told why they wouldn't, and they have the opportunity to come back in a year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you have any other comments about it?
Sure. So for those in particular that weren't recommended by the committee, often what we were seeing was a misalignment from the goals of the training course to the materials they were providing, or a misalignment with state board rule, policy, or even state law. And so that is some of the feedback they received. And again, as you mentioned, have an opportunity to resubmit for next year if they choose.
And there were some that were minor corrections, and we went back to them, and those providers agreed to make those corrections. And so, any other further questions or comments? If none, we have a recommendation in for charter school governing body training policy 6112. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Also on first and final reading is the board policy that includes the list of approved training courses for our local school board members to complete as part of their annual training requirements, also outlined in state board rule. For local training courses, we received 2 applications this year by our February 15th deadline, and they were from 2 different course providers. These applications similarly were reviewed by the same state board appointed advisory committee, and the recommendations that they made are listed in the policy. And the evaluation rubrics you also received and are available on our public agenda. And similarly, again, these rubrics are also shared with these applicants so they know reasons for recommendation or denial. And they also have the same opportunity to apply again. These training courses are recommended for 3 years as well, unless noted in the policy, and happy to answer any questions on this one.
And I will again move to accept local school board member training policy 2.100. Is there a second? Mr. Molinaro seconds. I will also say, having been a local board member for 16 years, the importance of these training classes. You know, when we come on the state board, a lot of times you'll find out all the acronyms, et cetera, but how a board functions from financial responsibilities of the local board is very, very important for those boards to be effectively functioning. And so these training classes, they have them on finance, they have them on school superintendent, board relations, operations. I mean, they have, and they're required by state law. When I first got on the board, I think if you didn't take your training a year, you could be removed from your position on the local Board of Education. You could be senator, you could be governor, you could be representative without training, but for state board, you had to have training. I don't know if that's still the law or not, but they're very important courses. And again, thank you, Ally, for maintaining the integrity and the thoroughness of these courses.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? All in favor then for accepting local school board member training policy 2.100 will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the final reading items. Next on the list is we have other business. I think Victoria Harpool from TEC has something she wants to say.
Thank you, Chairman Eby. I wanted to let you all know that due to the continued extraordinary circumstances and complications related to the 2024-2025 free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, the state has officially extended the Tennessee Promise FAFSA deadline to Thursday, October 1st. For more information, students and parents should refer to collegefortn.org for resources and opportunities to meet virtually with members of our team to troubleshoot any FAFSA issues.
Thank you, Ms. Harple. Secondly, we said so long to Ms. Sanders. We don't know if we're saying so long to two other board members, but this may be their last. Oh, you weren't done?
As a reminder, that is Thursday, August 1st.
Okay.
August 1st.
You're going to repeat that whole thing straight? Okay.
Due to the extraordinary circumstances and complications related to the FAFSA, the state has officially extended the Tennessee Promise FAFSA deadline to Thursday, August 1st.
Thank you. No, as I said, we don't know if this is the last meeting for our student member Laurel Cox or for our Chair Emeritus Lillian Hartgrove. Depends upon appointments. The longer they delayed, I'm okay with that. But if it is, again, we thank you, student member Cox. You've been very helpful. The perspective that you bring is very important to this board. And we hope that you got half out of it, what we got out of you for this. It was very, very helpful. So you want to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I said, I've only been here for a short time and definitely felt a little bit in over my head on this, but every member on this board and the whole staff team clarified everything for me within a timely fashion, made me feel really welcome here, and made me feel like that voice mattered. So I just want to say thank you to you all. This may not be the last one, but if it is, I just want to let all of you know thank you, and you've all made such a big difference.
Thank you. Mr. Wells.
Yeah, so I think most of you know that I know Ms. Cox outside of this board, and she recently graduated. I don't think anybody was worried about it, but she recently graduated from the same high school that I went to, and so I'm very, very proud of that, because I probably couldn't even repeat all the honors that she graduated with. And I know a lot of people on this board are excited about her choice in colleges. I know it was up in the air for a while, but she's decided to go to UT Knoxville, and so that's very exciting. I think you've done an amazing job since you've been here. I'm hoping that you'll serve with us for a while and make some trips from Knoxville down here until they appoint someone else. But it's really great to have you.
And then, again, Chair Emeritus Hartgrove, we said possibly so long to you last time, but you're...
You're likely to do this for, I don't know how many more quarterly meetings, and so how many times do you want me to say goodbye? No, I'm kidding. Some people know I have a sense of humor, and sometimes I get a little silly. My daughter says I get goofy. And so this is not the time to be goofy, but I will say this one more time for the record. I want to start with the Department of Education. I'm so thankful for the hard work and the due diligence that you all have put into every presentation that you put before the board. And without your work, it would have been more challenging for our team to do the work that they do. And we count on our team. I said this to them last night. We are so very fortunate to have a wonderful team at the State Board of Education. But that collaboration between the two, incredibly important. And I have to thank you, Commissioner. You've been a breath of fresh air. We've heard that from so many people. And I hear great things from your team, how you manage that team, and I'm just hearing nothing but praise for your style of management. And I think you deserve to hear some compliments, and thank you for what you are doing in the department. Individual board members, each one of you, I have learned so much from you, and I have such great respect and admiration for you, for the contributions that you make to every meeting. And I've learned so much from everyone. I cannot say enough how much I have learned, and I've told them last night at dinner. It's been an honor and a privilege, and sometimes those sound like trite words, but the reality is they apply. And when they apply, they need to be used. And so I know great things will continue. Excellent leadership with Chairman Eby and Dr. Sarah Morrison and all of our senior leadership team and every member of the State Board team. So thank you all very much. It has been an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
Yes,
Her too.
absolutely, for both of them. That was good.
Y'all are about to make me cry.
I will say this, is that we challenge each board member now, when they leave, to have something that they, can feel good that they left behind, some activity that they've worked on. And interesting, of the two of you, I'll say one for each of you. And I'll ask Mr. James to talk about the act, the Laurel Cox Act that was just passed by the, he mentioned it yesterday in the workshop, but now that we're here, I know that, but we're going to call it that too.
Yeah, the highly pivotal Laurel Cox Act that allows Laurel Cox and the next student member to miss school when they have to be doing State Board of Education things. I guess we always assumed it would be okay if you weren't there. It's not exactly like ditching class to go and vote at the State Board of Education. But just in case there was a creative principles out there in the future, we wanted to nip that in the bud, as they say.
And Lillian will always be the first chair emeritus that this board ever has, and an outstanding chair emeritus. And to me, I've said this before, she's been a great mentor and friend, and brought me in early in the game, included me on the BEP committee, et cetera, because when she became on the board, she, became the chair, she was sort of thrown into it, and she recognized the importance of training the vice chair, and that means a lot. So thank you.
I sincerely appreciate that. There was one other thing I was going to say, but I don't remember what it is. It's a senior moment, so it must not have been very important, so we'll conclude it at that. Thank you.
Any other final comments about anything before we adjourn? None. Meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, let's get members and State Board staff up in the front for a photograph.